And so we'll go ahead and get started. And our presenters today are Claire and Jen, that you know very well, but we'll go ahead and let you know that Claire is an education manager at the McDowell-Sonoran Conservancy. She's an educator, an artist, an anthrozoologist, and has taught in schools across the world. Claire brings a wealth of teaching experience to the Conservancy and uses her creativity and knowledge to design educational experiences that ensure every learner has the opportunity to be successful. And Jen is the education coordinator at the McDowell-Sonoran Conservancy. She has a background in wildlife biology and leading environmental education programs, including overnight and summer camps. Jen brings her experience of working with diverse audiences with barriers to learning. So I'll go ahead and hand that over to Jen and Claire.
All right. And that worked for sharing our screen? I think so. Awesome. Well, thank you, Julie, for that introduction. And thank you guys for joining us and being interested in learning more about the hows and the whys of us educating and empowering future generations, our youth. And we're going to get into a little bit as well as our passions behind this. You guys have met us. We're pretty passionate about what we do. So let's start there. Claire, do you want to share with us kind of how you got started and that passion spark that happened with you?
Yeah, so for me, I think it all comes down to that moment I decided to be a teacher. And I thought back to that one project and the only thing I actually remember from middle school. And we actually had an entire semester, for us it was 6 weeks, of creating a product that we'd present at an expo. So we worked on this project in all of our lessons. In French, we learned how to write business letters about supplies we needed from France. In math, we learned to budget with fake money, and that was a really big thing. We actually applying all of that knowledge. In English, we scripted our advertisements. In art, we created our posters for our expo. In social science, we learned about our conflict resolution skills. There was a lot of those. And in technology, engineering, we actually made a product which was a bike alarm, which is kind of useless, but we owned it and we went with it. And yeah, for me, that's the only thing I remember. And it showed me that the world doesn't work in tiny little boxes, and all of our subjects help us learn and develop, and we think through creativity. So it was an interdisciplinary project, and we were looking at real world problems, which is us being kids and having our bikes borrowed permanently by one of the other, when we're out biking around. So, and then my research in postgrad in education, I actually produced an interdisciplinary project, and these poor kids saw me in every one of those subjects. I was in their religious education subjects, their math, their science, their geography, all of that kind of thing, and I was linking it all together through creativity. And so also as a PhD student, my background is in anthrozoology and photography, so I use a lot of that, and I'll talk to you a little bit more about what anthrozoology is later. So again, I've taught all over the place. I've got about 16 plus years as an interdisciplinary teacher. I've been an informal educator for well over 8 years. I've been volunteering through education with conservation and wildlife organisations. So I bring all of those skills together and to create these awesome projects where all of our learners get to be successful and we create meaningful experiences. So that's a little bit about me. But Jen, do you want to tell us a bit about your background?
Yeah, I love it. And as you guys know, I feel like Claire and I are yin yang a lot of times. Like, it was so cool to hear about your experience in the classroom in that project. I hated school as a kid. I stuck to running around outside. I was fortunate enough that my parents exposed me to nature pretty young. And so I was riding my bike and building forts and making friends with the neighbor's donkey and running around in the monsoons, growing up in Arizona. And I very quickly realized that I was here to help the planet and protect the planet and what all of the living creatures on it. And so I got involved. My first experience with volunteering was actually with Southwest Wildlife. And I was 18 years old and cleaning enclosures of animals that were being rehabilitated. From there, I actually went to SCC, Scottsdale Community College, and did some lab tech work. And then at ASU, I got involved with a group called CASCAB, is what we abbreviate it. It is the local chapter of the Society for Conservation Biology, and it's all student-led. And this really opened my world. We did field wildlife surveys throughout the state of Arizona. And it was just so fun to be in a group of people, similar age, passionate. We're just starting out in our college careers, so anything is possible. And it was just lovely. And I became vice president of that group my final year there. And I've continued to grow from there and participate in lots of other experiences that I thought was leading me towards wildlife biology. And I got an internship with the Arizona Game and Fish Department. And it was actually my first pick of the internship, which was the Black-footed Ferret Project. I love ferrets, I love weasels, I love mustelids, and was so excited about this internship. However, I was just hiking and hiking and hiking, and it was beautiful, but I was helping to create a GPS map of prairie dog populations, because that's what ferrets eat. And I missed being out in the field with others and connecting others to nature. And so it was really great that I finally made that connection, and I'm really outgoing. And so I then got a job with the Phoenix Zoo and have been doing environmental education ever since. And I love our high energy camp programs. And I'm just so excited to make it back to the Conservancy. I've connected with them when I was in college, and just to be able to make a career out of environmental education is so meaningful to me. So I just said I'm just excited to make a career out of environmental education, and it's really a really unique area. So Claire, what does that mean to you since you're into it now?
Yeah, so I think I've really always been an environmental educator, but I just didn't have the certification, and I didn't know that it existed in its own field. So even as a teacher, especially looking at art, media and film, I was always getting my students to explore local and global issues, so social issues, environmental issues, and all that kind of thing. So I think the idea of environmental education, though, is it actually focuses more on a way of thinking. The idea is that we're creating lifelong learners. And like we do in all of our projects, we're also thinking about sustainability and teaching about that as well. So environmental education, it just is not possible unless you're thinking about things from an interdisciplinary perspective. And that's what really gravitates me towards environmental education. So we're really giving students a sense of place. We're creating an inclusive learning environment, and all of our students feel safe. So we're teaching students through experiences, so experiential learning, and we're empowering them to think critically and make informed decisions based in science. So the big thing about environmental education is we're not telling students what to do. We're creating a scenario, we're telling them stories, and they're the ones that tell us how they're going to solve that problem. So yeah, for some though, some students I don't feel as connected to nature, and they're not experiencing that sense of biophilia. In today's world, we're a little bit more disconnected.
Claire, can we tell everybody a bit about biophilia? This is definitely a new word for me.
Yeah, so biophilia, that's where my amphizoology comes in, because we think about biophilia quite a lot. So it's been around a while, but in 1984, it was E.O. Wilson that wrote about this in his work, Biophilia. So the actual meaning, Greek, comes from a Greek word of life and love and affection. So the love and affection is that love and affection that we have for nature. And it's actually a genetic position that we all have. So we all have that love of nature, but just sometimes we get a little bit disconnected. So especially for our students in a world of technology, they don't always get to be out in nature. So for us as environmental educators, we want to reignite that sense of biophilia. And when we do that, that's how we're going to create a positive change. We're going to connect students, we're going to inspire them, and ultimately we're going to make them care. So it's about fostering this emotional connection for landscape and animals, everything that lives there. And as we all know, I'm pretty sure we all know, and that's why we are stewards, but we know that studies show that spending time in nature is also beneficial to human health. So that's definitely something that we can all relate to.
I love that that is an aspect of our programming, and we all know as well with our programming, it has a lot of STEAM in it. So tell us about that.
Yeah, so STEM, we know about science, technology, and engineering and math. But when you put the A in it, you're adding the art. So it's not just visual arts, it's also going to be performance arts, it's going to be a little bit of visual arts, it's going to be language arts. All that creativity is basically what you're going to add to the program. So I've actually always been a STEAM educator. I just did not know the word back in the 90s. I didn't know that's what I was doing. So by including the arts, we're actually using creativity to help students develop their problem solving skills. And as an art educator, everything we do, everything we communicate is about problem solving. So you can't just stick a drawing at the end of a project and go, right, now it's STEAM. For arts to be part of it and for it to be a truly STEAM program, you have to be looking and connecting, intentionally connecting across at least 2 of the AZ academic standards. So it's actually quite easy for me to add STEAM into a program, but I know, Jen, your background is more based in traditional science. So how have you found adding the arts and that sense of creativity into our lessons?
Yeah, so I definitely have STEM drilled into my brain. It was really fun starting here and getting to know you and that side of you and bringing that A into it. It was intimidating. I don't like art. I'm not very good at it. But it's just brilliant. As Claire described, like really what bringing that in is just so much more than just a drawing. And I realized, well, I've been doing that. It's hands-on, collaborative, and fun and engaging activities that kids can engage in, and they have different experiences and can put their own spin on it. So I'm all for that, as long as we're not doing any big paintings anytime soon.
Yeah. And even if we were, it'd all be good, because again, everyone can achieve things in their own way. So yeah.
Love it. So biophilia and STEAM are parts of our programs and activities that we create, but of course also we connect to these standards. But our standards, our academic state standards, are not actually what our big objectives are of these programs and activities. Can you explain that?
Yeah, so you've got to remember that we are not classroom teachers, right? We're not doing formal assessments, and we're not making our students, we're only seeing them for an hour, we're not going to make them sit a test. We've got no clue where our students are on their learning journey. Where they say they are and where they actually are 2 completely different things, right? So our objectives are actually based on 3 very simple ideas. So we've got our cognitive objective. What aspect of the Sonoran Desert do we want the students to know about? Our affective objective, what do we want students to care about, right? That's how we're going to create change. And so that leads to the behavioural objective, is how do you want students to take a positive action in the conservation of the Sonoran Desert? So if we think about these main reasons first as environmental educators, then it's super easy for us to align with AZ standards. It becomes a lot more exciting and relevant. And what we do with the AZ standards is now we just look and see what part of the Sonoran Desert we want to focus on for each grade level. Sorry. So I know, Jen, when you first started, you spent a lot of time looking at AZ standards across all the subject areas. So from your perspective, how do you think that our programs align?
Yeah, and so, well, real quick before for those of you that aren't familiar with these standards, we got a couple pages over here on our slide, and they're just very specific like points that you can hit or kind of nearly hit. And some of them might be like compare life in a specific historical time period to life today, or more action ones like constructing arguments. And this is really critical, and it's a really amazing thing that we are able to do. It was a lot of work, but a lot of other organizations don't do this, and it's so meaningful to teachers. And you guys have all heard about Johanna that we partner with at Scottsdale Unified School District, and she's really supported us in this and given another academic perspective in this sense. And like I said, our teachers really appreciate it. And then another thing that we do with these standards in our programs is align it with local phenomenon. And what that means is that we are talking about species that you will encounter in the desert. We are talking about systems that you will encounter in the Sonoran Desert, not anywhere else. We're talking about what's here in our home, so that we feel more connected to that and we understand actions that we can do to support it. And what's really awesome is our programs, we can come into the classroom at any time in the year. We just had a teacher yesterday actually say, oh my gosh, you guys these hit a lot of standards, and I got to figure out what month my teachers do that, so I can have you come at that time. So our teachers will have us come maybe after that they've taught some of these. And so we are there as an activity to further grow those ideas that they learned in the classroom, or it can even be a fun introduction. So we get to have the kids, this is their first experience hearing these words such as herbivore or something, and then they get to further explore that in the classroom after. So our programs, our activities work so well wherever you want to put them. And with the standards, it creates this spiraling curriculum is what it's called when we have these different grade levels with these different connections.
Yeah, so do you want to explain, Jen, a little bit more about what a spiraling curriculum actually is? I know we've got a graphic on the screen as well.
Yeah, and so spiraling curriculum, it's really awesome that we're really developing and getting a real understanding of this, but it's with those standards building on top of each other. So to break it down in a broader sense, with our younger kiddos in our programs, 3rd and 4th grade, we're really focusing on discovering the Sonoran Desert and being connected and inspired and learning maybe a couple key things that we ourselves individually can do to be helpful. But then in our middle school programs, we are going to participate in science. We are going to collect data of the plants and animals in the Sonoran Desert. And then in high school, we're in the process of developing these programs where they're going to manage their own living lab at their classroom. So they're building off of understanding, discovering the desert, participating in science, and now we're managing it. And we all hope eventually this flows into having paid internships in the future. We know that conservation biology is not a diverse career, and there are many barriers for many people out there. And so we're hoping that this can facilitate and build a path for more people to get involved in conservation biology. And of course, we do all of this with Parsons Field Institute in mind and inject our research into everything that we do. And so, Claire, do you want to really walk us through how we're able to do that, put in that research that the Conservancy does?
Yeah, so with my background, it's always been about translating science into projects that are meaningful and communicating that to a wider audience. So I've spent all of my career looking to science and figuring out a way that the students can use that and interpret that. So an example, and is what we have here, is a picture from our actual current camera trapping project. So you've probably heard about that, you're probably working on that, and we're monitoring and seeing which animals live where in the preserve. So also for us as environmental educators and for the Conservancy, we want to find our niche, and finding our niche is about us responding and looking at the science that's happening right now. So in some of our lessons, we've got our buffelgrass research, we've got our geology research, that's in one of our programs. And again, what I love about the camera trapping project is we can use this in our hidden desert project. So one of the things we hear is, oh, it's hot, there's no animals out there, I don't get to see anything. But how do we talk about animals that we can't see? The thing I love about the camera trapping project is we're talking about you having a wildlife encounter from the images that you're seeing and how the images are being discovered the first time. So you haven't got to be out there harassing wildlife. It can be non-intrusive, and this is still a valid part of the research and a way that you're having an experience. So we talk about it. Also, we talk about what animals leave behind. So they love the SCAT project. I don't know, I haven't yet met a student that doesn't like looking at poop. And we're also looking at holes in the ground, and we're looking at tracks. And it's all about biophilia, right? So we're showing them this amazing image that's only a few people have got to see, and we're connecting them, we're creating that sense of biophilia. And we want to show them that this research is relevant to their lives. So coyotes in particular, that's one of the ones that we have a challenge to coexist with. But once we learn a little bit about their lives and about their habits, we're looking at how they move through the preserve. We're talking about how, at the night, we don't go into the preserve, the animals have the preserve at night, and we're there to enjoy it in the day. We're getting them thinking about that coexistence straight away. So that's the thing that I love about our niche, is that we're responding to real science, we've got access to real science, and we're getting it out there to the kids from the moment it happens. Literally, this picture I got the other day, and it's already one of the pictures that we use in our lessons. And that's what it's all about. It's about communicating in real time.
Like a month and a half ago on that photo.
Yeah.
I can't get over his ears. Okay, so we're talking about how we build these programs. A lot goes into designing these activities. There's a purpose behind every little thing we do, but what does this actually look like in the classroom, Claire?
Yeah, so integrated and interdisciplinary. So again, it does take a little bit of confidence and it does take a bit of experience to be able to create and manage a project that has so many moving parts. And remember, with me for this actual project where these pictures were taken, and this is just a little bit of all of the things we did in 25 minutes. So firstly, I want to draw attention to the fact that we are on the floor. We're going into a classroom. We don't know what kind of day a student has had. If we're not in the preserve, so how are we going to change this space to create a different sense of activity that's going on? We're going to move all the tables. We're going to sit on the floor. That's a really quick way of you changing the getting rid of any of that bad stuff that might have happened earlier. And then also, we're going to have a look at lots of different things, and we're integrating the arts and science. So right now you can see we've just done our activity where we're flipping over the cars to look about how bufflegrass is moving through the preserve. We've already studied it and we've looked at what it looks like through our magnifying glasses. And then we're going to do some math. So all these students were working together and we're doing some math. And because it's a long day and because we've been doing a lot of work all day, the numbers don't mean much to us right now. So that's why we're going to turn it into a graph. And all the way through this activity, I'm telling a story. And then they get to do their scientific drawings, or it doesn't have to be a drawing. It could be a piece of poetry. It could be a piece of writing, how they're going to look at and see how this bufflegrass breaks down and spreads around. So they're getting that real sense of they're developing their observational skills. And then as well, you can see we've got a girl that's been throwing some bufflegrass, some Velcro felt bufflegrass models. And we don't call this a game, we call it scientific modeling. And the thing I like about this activity is sometimes the kids are going to throw this bufflegrass like it's a baseball. And if they throw it like a baseball, I don't tell them that they're throwing it wrong. I tell them that how often are we going to have this bufflegrass flying through the air like a baseball? It's going to bounce straight off. But how do we throw it and how does the wind move? What happens if you throw all these bufflegrass seeds at the same time? What happens if you throw them all at the same spot? At what point do they all fall off at the same time? And all the way through, we're modeling and we're thinking about bufflegrass moving through the environment. And at the end, they tell me how we can prevent the spread of bufflegrass. And that's how we wrap up the activity. So by the end of it, they're thinking about the positive actions they can take. So there's lots of different things going on, but it's all about managing and guiding the activity and listening to your students. And this is the one that I thought I would enjoy least, because it's got a lot of math and science and graphing in it. But actually, the way that they embrace it, that's what makes me light up at the end of the day.
And the kids love it.
They do. They love throwing the bufflegrass. There's many ways you can throw that bufflegrass, and they will experiment with all of them.
And the magnifying glass too.
Yeah. So we've mentioned a bit about how we give every learner the opportunity to be successful. But Jen, do you want to tell us how you use your background to ensure that learners can actually access our programs, which is a little bit different?
Yeah, so I kind of skipped over that part in the introduction of me, but actually prior to working here, I spent 2 years doing behavior therapy work. I was certified as a behavior technician and worked with kiddos and adults with autism. And I love being creative and helping to break down a program so anyone can engage in the program and be successful and be able to participate in that. All of our programs, you can easily make adaptations so anyone can engage with them. Like Claire was saying, with even just throwing the bufflegrass, we really allow kids to try out all sorts of things. And so one thing that we do come upon is kiddos not English as second language learners. And all of our activities are so hands-on and there's lots of pictures. Yesterday, I was using a ton of photos and I was having kiddos point on the picture. And so they can still engage just at a different way. And I just love being able to do that for students because everyone deserves a chance to connect with nature and enjoy our activities. With this picture in particular, this was a group of boys, and one student, he led this group and he was very energetic and running around and not really listening to instructions. And I mentioned, or the group, we got on the subject of restoration. he took restoration to heart. Obviously, it is now covered in grass, so he is hoping to grow his own. He's specifically doing restoration to his mountain here, and we just allowed it to happen and gave him lots of compliments for that. So I just love being able to still use my behavior technician work, and by positively reinforcing the kids, and I pick up on those minor behaviors of if a kiddo is engaged or disengaged, or picking up things, and just being able to adapt always to, again, reach all those kiddos. One thing with allowing for adaptations is also the skill of redirecting our students when they seemingly say stuff pretty ridiculously or off the charts, right? And so Claire is brilliant at doing this, and I love some of her examples that I've seen in the classroom. How do you do this so well with your skill set?
Yeah, so it's years of experience, I think, and it just comes naturally. I think so. My background is an art teacher, and actually teaching courses that are assessed. One of the things you have to be super mindful of is you can't be telling students what to do. So you never tell them what to do, you let them come up with it, and you help them navigate and facilitate the learning. So for me, the key is you need to be listening to your students. If they're going off on a tangent, let them express themselves, and then think about what it is they say. And then when you're listening to them, you can find an opportunity to take something they've said and redirect them. Because you've got to remember that I know behavior issues, you know, that's something that people are worried about, especially going into a classroom. But usually the behaviours is because the student's really uncomfortable. They're not sure what to do, and they don't want to fail, and they don't want to look silly in front of their friends because they don't know the answer. So let them express themselves. And then, for example, poop. We're talking about scat. So there's opportunities for students to go off on a tangent about all the different ways that their dog poops. So rather than say we're not talking about dog poop, listen to them and say, you know what, that's super interesting. So what do you think about dog poop? Do you think the dogs are eating the same as, say, the canines, the coyotes and the foxes? No, they're not. They're eating dog food. So why do you think what would happen to that in the preserve? Well, it doesn't break down the same way. What happens if another animal eats it? All that kind of thing. And then all of a sudden, you've given that student the confidence that they've actually said something right. And they're going to love that, and they're going to really like that validation, and you're going to be able to get them back into the lesson. And then you can start talking about javelina scat and deer scat, the difference between herbivore scat and omnivore scat and carnivore scat and all this kind of thing. So once you realize that and you give them the benefit of the doubt, and you let them tell you a story, it just takes one little thing to bring everyone back. Because you've got to remember as well, like, these students are looking to each other for support too. So if you don't find a way of redirecting it, next thing you know, you've got a whole class of students talking all about dog poo. So that's what you've got to do, redirect, but listen, and it won't happen unless you listen. And I've had a lot of stories that we won't share here because they are off on a ridiculous tangent, but I have yet to meet a student that can tell me something that I cannot redirect. So, and yeah, I'm open to that challenge too, Jen. If you ever hear it, let me know.
Yeah, I haven't gotten her a couple of times. But Claire, that's a really good point. I love that, like, when our students do this, it's a form of communication and learning. I know when I have an idea, I love to chat it out with other people, and that's solidifying it in my mind. That's how I learned about it, is by talking about it.
Yeah, so confidence and collaboration are a key component of creating these interactive learning experiences. So I know, Jen, quite a few of the activities you teach really use those skills. So do you want to tell us a little bit about how you help students develop these skills?
Yeah, and right, with the confidence you kind of mentioned in the last couple of stories of allowing those kids to, like, initiate those stories and then redirecting them back to that activity. And when we allow kiddos to have confidence and to collaborate with each other, this is allowing them, right, that experiential learning. They're doing and learning, and they're gonna take what we are giving them to heart. If we ever accidentally shut down somebody and their confidence goes down, they're no longer connecting and learning from us. And a lot of the activities we do have a lot of collaboration, and students today, man, they're very supportive with each other, and that's really great too. Helping read if their friend can't. And with well, we'll just say in this activity in this photo here, so this is trash over time, and they are looking through these materials and collaborating, making decisions with each other. So someone might say, I think it's this, and they're going to say, I think it's that, and oh, this is why. And so these activities give tons of opportunities for our students to build that confidence and to collaborate. And those are really amazing skills to build off of and to become future conservationists. So with that and becoming future conservationists, right? So we always get to a point in our stories that we talk about taking positive action. That's, you know, we love to teach, we love to have fun, but eventually we hope they take positive action in the future. But we kind of always achieve this without telling them directly. Claire, how do we do that?
Yeah, so I really love the work of Zoe Will, and she's actually talks about students being solutionist thinkers. So that's really embedded in our objectives. We want our students to be empowered and we want them to come up with the solutions. So as a teacher, I know for me, it's the most rewarding lesson is when I'm learning from my students, right? So I like to facilitate, I like to guide. I can pivot the lessons to meet the objectives, but learning from the students and seeing a solution and a problem with new insight, that is why I absolutely love teaching. So it does take a while to feel comfortable, because as the instructor, you might not know the answer. And that is absolutely fine. Part of it is you working with the students to figure out and find the answer together. So it's all about those problem solving skills, which is all we do really in the arts. So again, I want to start by saying I'm not from Arizona. So for me, I am learning all the time. And I remember what it's like to discover something for the first time. So when I'm talking to third and fourth graders that have never heard of, yesterday, they couldn't figure out what javelina was. They knew it, but they didn't actually know it. And I know what it was like too, to not know what a javelina is. So I embrace that, and it's okay. And I empower them and let them know that it's all right that we don't know the answers. But from this, we want to tell the students a story, and we want them to be able to solve the problem. So at the end of the activity, we want them to tell me what we could do to make the world a better place. So usually my stories have, they have little hints in them. There's little things that go away. I'm not asking them to tell me a solution to every single thing that kind of wasn't quite right in my story, just to tell me the thing that they most connect with and to share. They take ownership. So I've never once told a kid to pick up trash. In my entire teaching, as soon as I learned about this from an Australian educator, it's like, never tell a kid to pick up trash. You want to model it, you want to talk about it, and then you pick up the trash yourself, and then they will pick up the trash behind you. And it works. The kids will tell me to pick up the trash. I never have to say it. I never have told a kid that they have to, in our lessons, to stay on the trail. We go through the scenario. They're the ones that tell me, this would have worked out a whole lot better, miss, if you'd have kept your dog on a leash and you'd have stayed on the trail. So I listen to them and they tell me. They take ownership, and the solutions that they come up with are solutions they can do as a young person. They can't go around the neighborhood and pull up all of the fountain grass. They can't, that's beyond them. They can't change the buying habits of their phone, but they can pick up after their dog. And believe me, no matter what you think the solutions are going to be, the students, they are the world's harshest critics. And for them, the solution is, no, we do this. This is what we do. No. And so they're the ones that are going to tell you how to be advocates for the and stewards for the environment. And it's just about us embracing that and helping them on that journey, which links right the way back to our spiraling curriculum. So as you can see, I'm very passionate about being a solutionist. That's one of my things, and I'd always done it, but I did not know what the word was.
Real quick, can we talk about this photo?
Yes.
Just real quick, because this is such a cool photo, you guys. This is a watershed model, and again, these conversations that we have prior to them doing this is just questions. I'm asking them, what does rain do? What do we think it's going to do when it hits this plastic paper and this plaster mountain? And it's all inquiry based, and the students get, you know, to answer these questions. And then we get to the point of doing some habitat restoration. They created this all on their own. This is how we see, you know, parking lots developed, right? They have these areas for water runoff. And I just thought, what a child of in fourth grade did this on their own without any prompting. So they're obviously observing, like in their neighborhoods and their communities, and were thoughtful enough to create something like that.
So being a solutionist is really about allowing students to develop their own critical thinking skills. So again, we've told you that our lessons are pretty short. So Jen, do you want to tell us how we create space for critical thinking when we've got such a short lesson?
Yeah, so actually allowing for these opportunities are not as difficult as it sounds. It just means that we give students opportunities to think for themselves. Just like I said, I asked a ton of questions and they themselves were thinking and developing these answers and collaborating with each other. All that we have to do is just remember that learners we're not there to speak every fact about the Sonoran Desert or about watersheds. We are there to just ignite some of these conversations in them and teach them a little bit about how the Sonoran Desert works, and they take it from there and they apply this knowledge. And so we may be helping to define certain words for them, carnivore, omnivore, but they then are going to take it and run with it. Our kiddos really take ownership of their learning as well, and will use, I love it when they come back to me and tell me things that they've learned from Claire, or maybe I'll throw in something. Oh, maybe this, so with buffalo grass, you guys learned about grass. We love grass. Grass needs to be in the desert, right? No, Miss Jen, grass is terrible for that grass. It's terrible for the desert. And so it's just so cool that we've set them up to make that decision for themselves because of the activities that we've set up for them, but we didn't just come out and say it directly. And with that, we've kind of mentioned it before, there's no one right answer. And so, they may have different opinions of these things or get to a different endpoint. They all might have different endpoints in some activities. And that varies from a lot of different education. And we're used to, and standard education, used to seeing a very specific, this is how you do it, this is the outcome, and then we can assess you on it and make sure that the educators did their job and that the students learned. But how does this work in environmental education, Claire? Because it is so different.
Yeah, so this is one of the pictures that we looked at a lot when I was doing my postgrad in education, and that's especially something that we are really good at in arts, is thinking about differentiation. So as environmental educators going in and teaching thousands of students all across the valley, there is no way that we can write one test that's going to meet the needs of thousands of learners and give them the opportunity to be successful, right? And why should we? So if you think about, a lot of the ideas go back to, we'll differentiate by outcome. So they either do a good job or a not so good job. That's it, that's what you get. But no, every learner engages differently, and every learner deserves the opportunity to be successful. So we've got less than an hour to inspire these young minds, and ultimately our objectives are, we want them to take positive actions in the conservation of the Sonoran Desert. We want them to know something, care about it, and be able to do something about it. So we know that there's different learning styles. So we've got our visual learners, our auditory learners, our kinesthetic learners, and our reading and writing learners. So in our 1 hour program, there's all of those different things happening in our program. So at one point, that student has the opportunity to excel and to show their peers that they are really good at doing this and they're great at doing something. So one example is, we do not need to test the learner and ask them to tell us or describe 3 different, species of cactus that they've seen in the preserve or that we've just told them about. They can find that information on the internet. But what we do want them to do is we want to think about, well, okay, so how could we help protect these cactus? But why should we protect these cactus? And then if you really want to get down to knowing the difference between 3 species of cactus, maybe you ask them, well, should we do the same and protect the cactus, each cactus in the same way, right? And what happens if a kid does not like cactus? That is absolutely fine, because then they can talk about how they're going to protect a feline, a bobcat or a mountain lion or a coyote or a bird. So, or if you break it down and you switch your objectives to be things that you want the students to think and feel and care about, all of those AD standards and all of that other stuff is just going to naturally slot in there, because we want our kids to have a really good, meaningful experience. And as environmental educators, it's not about setting them a test at the end of the day. So I feel pretty passionately about that one as well, because we've seen how great this style of teaching is with our students, and our teachers really appreciate that too. Yeah,
and to encourage those different answers and and differences in us. I greatly appreciate that. I hated tests as a kid. And what we're doing is we're empowering them. We're empowering them to think for themselves and to be able to come up with ideas and maybe futures on how they can help. And that is so empowering for our kiddos. But gosh, it can feel overwhelming at times to think about helping the environment. Claire, how do we do this without making them feel overwhelmed?
So I've learned over many years, I've learned that really we do not give students enough credit, right? We don't give them credit for what they're able to express, what they want to learn, and what they want to talk about. So one of the things that we do in our programs is we create space and we make sure that we create an environment where we don't tell students that what they're doing is wrong. So I love this photo because this is a couple of third graders and they're looking at the desert hole activity and they're trying to figure out who is most likely to live in each hole. There's not a wrong answer, there's just an answer which fits a little bit better than everything else. But what they love is I've actually given them a copy of an actual field guide that I would use when I'm going out looking at desert holes. But because I tell them, you know, guys, you're scientists, but you're in training, I've put a few little notes on there. I've put a few little arrows. In here, you've got the pages which are going to be most useful to you. And they go through and they really like the fact that I've empowered them. I've given them an actual science book and I've helped guide the process and guide the learning. At the end of the day, I do not delete any of the text. So the text on that page is a text in their book, but they go through and they find the names of the animals. They look at the size of the den. They might not know how to use a ruler, but they know how to show that one thing is bigger than the other. And then and they like to copy down and write down the animal that lives in the hole. So, and they use that information to see where an animal lives. So I think for us, it's really important for us to give the students credit and to give them actual tools that we will use, and we just modify them and make them more accessible. So, and we can see it. I mean, they love looking at these books. So I'm really glad
so
we
little.
the books are big compared to them.
Yeah.
So I know that student choice as well, we kind of mentioned it, but it can be really difficult to manage if you don't come from like an arts and creative background. So I know, Jen, for example, this geology project was a really interesting experience for you. So do you want to tell us a little bit about how you felt in this room?
Yeah, so we did this program when I was still fairly new. So I very much was glued to my applied behavior analysis and yes, we can change programs, we adapt to make everyone successful, but your outcome is the same. We were, you know, when working with kiddos with autism, we desired a very specific outcome. And it was so cool to get, this was a very, for me, in my face, like, remember what environmental education is. And it's amazing that Claire is so passionate about this, that she must have been an incredible teacher in the classroom. I would have enjoyed you as my teacher and incorporating this in everything that she does. But so we did this activity with these kiddos and reviewed with them geology and colors and perspective taking, and gave them canvas, and Claire showed some examples that she had done, and we're drawing kind of kind of outlining rocks and making like kind of a mountainscape. That's what I thought was the outcome. And I noticed some students not like that in that picture right there. Is that a mountainscape? What is that? And so a couple kiddos were specifically not doing that. And I go up to Claire and I say, I don't think they're creating mountainscapes. What should I tell them? And Claire just, that's fine. Are they enjoying the activity? Yes. Are they, you know, using the materials we have? Yes. That's it. That's all environmental education and a big part of what we do. Are we connecting them? Are they having fun? Do they feel empowered? If it's yes, then support the students.
Yeah, and the thing I like about this is, you know, even when you come to like redirecting, the same kind of skill happens here, right? So on the whiteboard, there are examples of rocks that look like they were in neons, really bright colors. So whether or not the student deliberately was looking at the neons, I could go and say, oh, you know, like, you've really been looking at the neons here. I really like the contrast of the colors and the way that you've traced the shadows. All of that stuff really helps empower the students, and it encourages them to then look again and then look again. So you're reinforcing them and you're showing them that a process. And the thing about this activity is, we were at the end of the day, we were like, okay, there shouldn't be more than like 15, 20 students by the end of the lesson, because they're all wrapping up for the end of term. At the end of the day, there were 50 students in that room, all engaging in the activity because it was the end of the school year and they just never left. So that shows you the power of thinking about the geology project. We looked at actual science study from the preserve, all of that stuff, and they created something really creative, and they learned how to look at something new that they'd always seen. So I really love that project, and I can't wait for us to take it out there again.
Yeah, it's lovely, and it's so cool to see what came out of that, and it's so fun to be able to be in the space where we have Claire to create those projects and programs. And with art being a part of your background, so is anthrozoology, and this is kind of a new term for a lot of us. And this has influenced how we do some of our programs and how we talk to our students about animals. Can you explain more about that?
Yeah, so my background is in anthrozoology. So what I'm looking at is how that humans interact with animals. So it does influence the way that we talk about animals, because remember, our projects and the things we're doing is embedded in the science that's happening in the preserve. So I'm super interested in teaching students about animals, and also I brought up the term egomorphism. I bring it up all the time, but in the Environmental Educators Conference, I introduced it to a lot of people there as well. So we want learners to connect with animals, but we want them to be respectful of wildlife. We don't want them to be sticking their hand in a desert hole. We don't want them to be harassing a coyote. We don't want them to be feeding raccoons, right? And we don't want to anthropomorphize animals, where they start to think of animals as having human characteristics. So there's a real tendency in environmental education to use anthropomorphism to foster compassion. But there's a danger there that we ignore the fact that animals have really complex lives, right? Our animals in the Sonoran Desert have been able to adapt in ways that we just don't fully understand. Maybe we'll be able to understand a little bit more by the end of the camera trapping project. But what I like to use, and I talked about this at another conference when I was presenting as well, is egomorphism. So when we teach students about animals, we're teaching them that animals are like us, but they're not human-like. So what this means is we don't know the inner minds of the animals. Let's not pretend that we know exactly what they're feeling, but we do know, and studies have shown, that animals have their own minds, right? They experience pleasure and pain, they're sentient, and they have their lived experiences. So when we talk about animals, we can show that animals have their own intrinsic value and they're valuable to a healthy ecosystem. So as environmental educators, we want to teach them about the scientific research. We don't need to reduce animals to fictional characters in a storybook before we start to care about them. And that's what I love when I'm talking to the students, because we're thinking about animals as the animal that have the experience. We're not actually having to make them look cute and cuddly. And one of the things that we do as well is we try and look for the most realistic versions of cuddly toys when we're teaching about them. And even if you don't have to tell the kids you're doing, I'm talking about egomorphism right now, it's just the way that you switch the narrative, and that's really impactful. And at the end of this project, the kids care about the mountain lions. They're not going to take the bobcat kittens. They realize that a kitten does not need to be rescued, and that a wild animal is okay out there in the wild, and what can they do to coexist with it. So that's what I feel really passionate about. But like I said, anthrozoology didn't even exist until like the late 80s. And so one of the things we're also doing is we're educating students for 21st century careers. And there's other things that we don't even know that's going to exist. And that's why STEAM is really good. And so can you tell us a little bit about how our STEAM programs are going to be able to prepare students for their future careers?
Yeah, right. So several things in our programs are brand new, and we're just starting to use them, and that's so exciting. And so who knows what is going to exist in the future? What different concepts are we going to study? What new things are we going to learn? And even the jobs that are going to be out there for our students. And so just by incorporating all of the things that we've really talked about so far within the last hour is helping build these students for endless possibilities by really honing in on those critical thinking skills and allowing for choice and allowing students to use their own voice and allowing for failure and for things not to work out, and showing them that the world isn't always in organized boxes and that there's many possibilities, and just mixing it up and again, using that art and, you know, bringing that in with everything as well. Is there anything you wanted to say about that slide?
Oh yeah, I think it's just, we're seeing that there is definitely a growth in STEAM programs, and we're going to be preparing students for that unknown. And the whole idea about critical thinking skills is that they're empowered to make their own decisions and to think about these things. So it's going to be really exciting to see what the future holds, and for our solutionist thinkers that we're working with. So, but it's not just us saying about how great our programs are. Our teachers also really appreciate our programs and giving us 5-star reviews. And so it only goes up to 5. It doesn't even go up to 10. So we're up there. And yes, I have to add that in. But we've taught getting on for 1,500 students already. And by the end of this academic year, it's going to be a lot more than that. So Jen, do you want to tell us a little bit about some of the feedback we've had?
Yeah, so the biggest one that we receive all the time for in-classroom programming is teachers are blown away by how hands-on it is, that it is an activity and that it's like inquiry-based student-led. A lot of folks are like, do you need a projector? No, we don't. We actually need a lot of floor space though. And they're like, oh, okay. And that, you know, the students are engaged for the majority of the time, and that when students are disengaged, we can loop them back in. During Expedition Days Live as well, you guys, we got tons of feedback about our station leads and assistants being amazing educators, and wow, they're so experienced. And I smiled because some of them were a little new at it. And so it's just so great that these activities are done in a way that, you know, empowers our students, but it's not too hard to empower our stewards to learn how to do them too, and thus empowering our students again.
And we know as well that our students love our programs. I mean, we know that our teachers can't go and buy scat from every animal that lives in the preserve, but we can, and we can take it and teach 1,000 students. So Jen, one of the stories I really love is about the Jenga activities. So do you want to share the story from the students?
Yeah, so one story we mentioned a lot is about students trying to hold a Jenga tower. They were all very passionate. Students get very we build the ecosystem with animals, so they each are very committed to, if I put in a rabbit block, I represent the rabbit population. And so if you pull the rabbit block, I am just, oh my God, I'm so sad because you destroyed my population. So they are all so invested at the end of this 20 minutes. And at the bottom of the ecosystem Jenga tower, we have all of our non-living resources. And someone rolled dice and we were to pull that last block. And without me even saying anything, one student stood up and said, oh my gosh, the tower's going to fall. And another student stood up and it's, well, what do we do? We need to hold the tower. And there was all this commotion and all the kids stand up and they embrace this tower. And the kid at the bottom is looking at everyone else to give them the okay. And they're like, we got it, it's okay. And he slowly pulls out the last block in the tower. And it was just, I'm just sitting there in awe of these kids and cheers. And then it just gets even louder. And all the kids are so excited. Their animals, what's left of them, have been saved. And then they look at me, we saved it. I go, wow, you guys, that was incredible. What teamwork. You came together and held your tower. A little bit of bad news though, we don't have any resources. Your animals are out of food, water, and shelter. What are we to do? And they just instantly started giving me all sorts of ideas, and it was just incredible. And it's just something again that I sat back and just watched. And it was just because I facilitated this and set them up that they had this extraordinary moment in their life that hopefully they remember, and they'll take it back to their parents and share that little story with them.
Yeah, so I think we're just about wrapping up. So thanks everybody for joining us today. And I hope you enjoyed learning a little bit about youth education and why we do it. So Jen, you've obviously met as my Better Impact wizard. So again, I couldn't do any of this without Jen. And so Jen, do you want to tell us a little bit more about how to get involved?
You know what's cute about this slide is Carrie was my Better Impact wizard, and now I'm the Better Impact person. So I love that we put him there. But yes, guys, we do have opportunities coming up next week. We are going to be on the road with a classroom that is literally 5 minutes from the Conservancy office. There might be a couple of openings for that. And then we will take a bit of a holiday break as we work behind scenes to get everything else prepared. And then we will kick it up again with on the road throughout the valley. We go to classes within 30 miles of the office. And then it is not on Better Impact yet. Hopefully in the middle of the month, you will see activities coming up on Better Impact for Expedition Days Live in the spring. That is going to be the last week of February when it merges into March. We are going to have one shift a day because we're not going to have 2 schools out. We're just going to have 1 school per day, and so that'll happen again, and that'll be a lot of fun. But again, those will come on Better Impact maybe middle of the month.
Cool. All right, so I'm going to stop sharing now, and then I guess Julie, if you let us know if we have any questions. All right,
I'm fighting this light the whole time.
Yeah, so I'll pass you back, or I'll pass us back to.
And I just want to echo what Max said, is that your training is what made us stewards, great educators. It was your example. And I don't know about everyone else, but I am so inspired. I've learned so many new words, and I've talked to them on several occasions. Feel like you guys just blew me away with what you guys do every day. So I know that probably we have a lot of questions, and so I'll go ahead and open it up to everyone if they have questions.
Trying to get it back in focus. That's why I'm moving so much. Sorry. Whatever. Any questions, or does anyone have any experiences that like maybe a slide resonated with them and said, oh, during Expedition Days Live, that's exactly what happened? Anyone have like a small story like that? Feel free to share too.
Hi, I just wanted to tell everybody, we had an art project at Canal Convergence that Claire created. And it was so much fun. The kids had an awesome time, and it drew families to the table. So while the kids were having this great time, it gave us a chance to chat with their parents about who we are and what we do. And I know the canvas is somewhere in the office there, and it was so much fun. Kids created trails, and so I understand what you're saying about just kind of leaving them on their own creativity. It was a great experience and really enhanced the whole Canal Convergence experience. So thank you.
Welcome. Yeah, see, and that's what it's about, right? It's about just linking everything together and not being scared of students and learners making their own choices. And that's when the magic happens, is when you create a safe environment for choice.
I think what's really interesting was your talking about modeling behavior and not telling them specifically, not to do certain thing. And I think that's something that I really kind of took to heart, because I think, it's just as parent, and you just, you kind of put yourself in that kind of like, I know more than you kind of position, and you kind of want to kind of like, oh, I'm going to help you and tell you, this is what you should do. And so I really thought that was something to really think about. And also, not only in the classroom, but also on the trails too, to, not to be the authoritative type of thing and try to help to model, or to try, to help them to understand why they shouldn't do it and make it their idea and empower them. So thank you for that.
Right. And we just want to help. And so we think by just telling folks, right. But we all remember how it is when you were a kid. Like, you don't want to be told what to do, even if it's the right thing, right? Like, I know, like, yeah, with my dad, I'm like, that probably is the right thing, but just because you said it, now I don't want to do it.
Yeah, and I see a question about getting involved but not sure about working with kids. So I think we always love it when we have assistants coming out with the programs. So there's always something little that you can do. It might just be a case of you taking a few photos or videos of us, because when we're out there teaching, we're so in the zone and we're so busy that we don't get opportunities to sit back and take a picture or to document something. And the kids come out with some brilliant things, but we don't get a chance to like stop and write those things down. So even if you just want to come out and assist, that would be absolutely great. Our programs are designed so that Jen and I, or 2 people, can go out and run the whole program, just the 2 people. And so anybody else that we have don't kind of feel like, oh no, it's going to be really stressful. No, we've got it covered, and you can come in and take on as much of a role as you like. And again, it just takes a little bit of practice, a little bit of observing, and you will be able to figure out and see the pattern. Because I know for some it does look like organized chaos, but the chaos is organized and the thread is through there. And as long as we're all having a great time. So it's just, sometimes it might just be getting over your own little barrier to feel comfortable, but we'll help you get there, and there's no rush.
And to build that confidence, we are currently in process of building a workshop. We took advice from the rest of the Conservancy, what we were seeing. So we're actually going to have kind of like an engaging K-12 student workshop and really kind of dive into the techniques that we do use and give us some time to practice some of those techniques. And so I think that'll really help our stewards out as well. But I think also tell our stewards, you be you. Not everyone is super comfortable around kids, and that's totally fine, and if you don't want to be in the classroom, that's okay too. If you want to help us out, but you're not quite sure, email me. If you got time, let me know your skills. Let me know what you want to do. Because right now, as we are developing youth education, Ms. Denise is our interim chair up there. We have tons of different stuff to do. So there's opportunities. So if you're like, oh, it's cool and I want to support the students, but not directly, reach out to us. You can email Denise too as well. youtheducation@mcdowellsonoran.org. Great question. Thank you for asking.
This is Susan. I'll just reiterate that all the good things they do with the students, Claire and Jen do with the stewards too. I had the privilege of going to, am I going to say it right? What was the camp I went to?
Oh yeah, Phoenix Herpetological Society, yeah.
Right. But anyway, it was loads of fun, and seeing the kids be so enthusiastic just warms your heart. And when you said, well, one of your favorite moments, one of mine was when we were cleaning up. And so all that marker was on that, on the plastic underneath the watershed. And this boy held it up and said, look, it's art. And it was a gorgeous abstract piece of art. But, so he was continuing to observe, and there's the A in STEAM.
Yeah, exactly.
Sure. And the other point I wanted to make is I think I'm a better trailhead ambassador for having gone to that camp and what I've learned from you, because now I think I'm better with the little children at the trailhead, and I certainly enjoy them more. So thank you for that.
Well, thank you. Thanks for sharing.
That's great. And thanks for sharing, right? Like, I hope that we bring how we interact with our students to the stewards as well. If a steward needs an accommodation because you don't want to sprawl out on the floor, please tell me. There are some days I don't want to sprawl out on the floor too. So I don't want these to seem out of reach for anybody. So I am all about accessibility, and please, please, please let me know what I can do to support you guys better if there ever is an opportunity to.
I think the most important thing about youth education is not only are we reaching the youth though, but we're also letting our wider community know that the preserve is for everybody, and that everybody has a stake in the preserve. And through youth education, we're also giving back to the community and empowering youth. So we're not just taking, we're giving back.
Thank you, Denise. And I guess, dang, I really should have mentioned on the last slide, you guys, our youth education orientation one coming up is actually this Saturday. Please, please, please attend and to learn more about these programs and reaching communities.
I always say it, and I do. We can change the world in 20 minutes, like 25 minutes. We teach them something, and that's what's going to foster, and create that change. So, yeah, we can't wait to go back and start meeting these students through their learning journey. That's going to be really great.
You're the lady with the poop.
Yeah, I get that, and they see a video of me too when they go out to the preserve. So I'm always famous for about 5 minutes when they're like, "It was you." So yeah, all these little things help create these impactful experiences.
Okay, all right. Well, thank you very much for this awesome presentation, and we enjoyed hearing about that and enjoyed learning more about you guys. And I think if there's not any other questions, then this will be our last Lunch and Learn for December. So happy holidays to everyone, and we'll be back in January.